So now we will have here on the stage John Hamalian talking about turning the continuous improvement flywheel, lessons from deploying A3 thinking in financial services. John, I will leave it with you.
Christopher, my friend. Hey, you're doing an awesome job, man. Bravo and ahoy there. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone who is up at this point, which is probably mostly Asia Pacific at this point. And I'm John Hamelian in Singapore, helping to represent Southeast Asia region. Which probably a lot of us are up right now at this time zone, maybe a few from the Middle East and other parts of Asia Pacific. And before I introduce Raj, because Southeast Asia, we have because I help represent the region, and we've had even since yesterday a lot of great people on the chat box from all over the region. I want to do a little shout out to our friends around the region that have taken your time to join us in this conference from neighboring Malaysia, just across the causeway here, nearby Indonesia, and Myanmar, and Laos, and Cambodia, Brunei, East Timor, our friends in the Philippines. We have Mark Hermo there and others. And in Thailand, hello to you, and a special shout out to Kun Bunserm and Kun Pisith and Kun Noah. So Sawadi Kap to you. And one special mention for Vietnam. You might notice a lot of guys from Vietnam that have been very active in the chat. And that's a big thanks to our friend Qua. So Qua has taken the initiative to start a lean network in Vietnam. And a lot of those people are actually on our conference now. So thank you, Qua, for taking the initiative. And Xin Zhao to you and everyone else in Vietnam. Back in Singapore, our friends in Singapore Institute of Technology, especially Dr. Angelina, just presented a little while ago some great cases, lean healthcare, including some great videos from the Gemba in hospitals. So if you haven't seen that, check out the video that will come after the conference, as well as our speaker, who's part of the Excellence Community, which is a little lean network, little lean community we have here in Singapore, which was co-founded by Agnes Moon. We exchange ideas, and every once in a while we meet for a happy hour, have a little fun, kick back, and talk about all kinds of things lean. Which brings me to Rajdeep. So Rajdeep goes by Raj. Hi, Raj.
Hey.
And yeah, so Raj and I have known each other for a few years. We've had coffee quite a few times. We talk about all kinds of things. But one of our conversations stood out to me. And that's when Raj had told me the story of one of his last roles, one of his previous roles, when he actually took a lot of time to introduce A3 thinking, and in particular into that area, which was the financial services area. And that industry, so I don't know about everyone in the conference right now, what you think, but in my experience, deploying A3 thinking, for those of you that don't know so much about that, this is the book, one of the greatest books by OEI, is Managing to Learn, all about A3 thinking. Not so easy to implement, and I would say in particular in the financial services sector, what we normally see is organizations and especially leaders, right, Raj, that they love PowerPoint. They love 50 slides of PowerPoint. They love 100 slides of PowerPoint. So to try to get an organization and especially leadership buy-in to consolidate your thinking, keep your thinking so simple and concise that you can literally fit it on one sheet of paper, is a real feat. And so that's why I thought that this would be a great benefit for Raj to share that. And also we don't have too many cases, if any, from financial services during this conference. So, really great to have you here, Raj, and looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thanks, John, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here, and I've been attending most of the sessions since morning, and some absolute passionate people. I think that's one thing that kind of is the common link, other than lean, for all of us, is how passionate we are about the subject. Just wanted to check, since I'm sharing my screen, is it visible, John? Because I'm not able to see the screen. Is my screen
Yeah,
visible?
looks
Okay.
good, Raj.
All right, great. Thanks so much, John. All right, cool. So let me do a brief introduction, talk a little bit about myself. As John mentioned, I live and work in Singapore. I am from India. I've been living in Singapore for the last 11 years with my 16-year-old lovely wife and a 10-year-old daughter, 10-year-old dog. You can see this, every Diwali we try to do a family portrait photograph. As you can see from here, we really struggle to do that with my dog jumping everywhere. In terms of my passion, other than lean, is also about mountain climbing. So you can see a photograph of me. This is my Everest suit. I bought that at discount some time back. I'm yet to use it, but hopefully sometime soon I will, get to a 8,000-meter mountain. In terms of work, I'm currently working in Amazon Web Services, but prior to this, worked in financial services with Standard Chartered. But like many of you, started up a career in GE. Started with Six Sigma, then Lean, and then Lean in services for the last 20 years. As John was mentioning, talking about financial services, and if you look at overall operational excellence, whether it's all the way from re-engineering, transformation, Six Sigma, Lean, if you look at the history of operational excellence in financial services is one industry that's extremely fickle in this area. So they pick up things, they run it for a year or so, then they give up, they stop, they pick something else up, they start for that. They don't really see the benefit in the long term. So there are very, very few cases where you will find some sort of knowledge sharing and something that they have done over many, many years, cases of such nature coming out in the open. So financial industries are a fickle in that way. So a lot of us practitioners, and I don't know how many of you are from here, will have faced the challenge in terms of, hey, you've just about gotten buy-in, just about doing things starting to happen, when suddenly the ship turns completely 180 degrees and you have to start things from scratch. But the pattern is this. Okay, you have a new leader joining in. The new leader would have experienced operational excellence somewhere, wanting to drive that in the organization. But they typically use one of two approaches. They either go the culture capability route, or they go through, hey, let's align towards an outcome, and that outcome being cost out. So you have a whole lot of operational excellence programs that that have a lot of belts, all the different colored, yellow, green, blue belts that are there, looking at building capability within the organization. It's less so much on the kind of impact that's happening. And then you have a whole bunch of organizations that will say, okay, let's do a lean cost out. Typical examples: Citibank, a whole lot of banks in Australia, UK, and the US as well. So, but in both cases, what it involves is they will get a whole contingent of experts, either them hiring themselves or through external consultants. So you have a whole industry like with BCGs and the McKinseys having their own take on driving operational excellence and so on. Today, the new rage now, I think in the last 3-4 years, has been agile, and you can see the same pattern repeating all over again. You have all whole lot of banks, insurance companies wanting to suddenly change their operating way of using Spotify models and so on. Similar things with rapid automation and so on. Of course, this was what pays our bills, but this industry per se, it doesn't really take this to heart and go for a really, really long time. So I just wanted to talk about my experience. So I've been doing this for a while, like many of you, and I want to talk you through our case. which was in my previous organization, was Standard Chartered Banks. For people who don't know, Standard Chartered Bank, very old bank, very old institutions, over 150 years, in emerging markets like Asia and Africa, 85,000 colleagues, 59 countries. You have things like, corporate banking, trade finance. You have private banking, wealth management, retail banking, digital banking. You have a whole lot of services. There were quiet companies on the way, so you have a lot of multiple systems, different cultures, different processes all over the way, right? So it's a very typical large bank who are embracing modern technology, but at the same time, a lot of the things are pretty archaic. And one of the things that you'll also notice in that, financial services, in addition to cost, quality, speed, there's this fourth thing on risk, which is sometimes overpowers all the other three elements. So they are very, very risk averse, especially since you're handling money and so on. So again, so this is the background in this particular organization. I was with them for 5 years. Around 3 years back, we started a cultural continuous improvement program. We called it the improvement habit, which is again compounding of small gains when everybody in the organization starts to kind of do it. And over 2 years, we did something really, really extraordinary. At least, it was one really fulfilling part of my role, because I was, part of this. Did not do everything. Sometimes I was a spectator. Sometimes I was an architect. But in a span of 2 years, we created something where close to 20,000 people in the bank were trained. We used A3 problem solving as a mechanism for driving improvement. You had a whole lot of people participating. We created so many sponsors, over 1,000 coaches. I think in 2 years we had over 5,000 improvements that have identified, executed, results seen and displayed and shared. And all this on happening in an engagement style where a lot of people were engaged, capability was being developed, but at the same time we delivered over $200 million in impact, both revenue and cost, creating of capacity, as well as of client experience. And this was something that we kind of got in a couple of awards in the industry. I think the British Quality Foundation gave an award earlier this year. But what is most fascinating about this was we did all this without adding any full-time central resource, which is like we didn't have an A3 improvement team that came in, were hired with a lot of coaches across the organization. It was all done with existing resources, existing capacity, existing capability that existed within the bank. Okay, so that was something that was really fascinating for me. I thought, when I left the organization earlier the year, I was always thinking, that kept striking me is that why are we so successful? Sometimes it's good to be successful. Of course, it's good to be great to be successful, and we figure out, hey, where we went wrong. But sometimes it's really helps to understand as to why we were successful. So the first thing I must say that success of course happened because we were lucky. So a lot of things happened together. We had a great leader. We had the right circumstances. COVID for us was an enabler and so on. So there was a luck to do it. But there were a few things that I thought was really, really important for us to understand and for us to kind of see if we want to replicate this. There are a few things I will, quickly jump across because I've been hearing similar things. So one is that, the tooling that you want to use, and we've tried using, different mechanisms in terms of when we introduce problem solving, continuous improvement in an organization. The A3 problem solving, I thought, was the most effective because it's so easy to understand. You put and apply a bunch of principles. You swarm around the whole thing. It really and it's very easy for people to understand. The feedback essentially was, hey, I could do a 1 hour. I could do a 1 hour understanding or a session on A3 and get started. I may not be able to be an expert in it, but I can get started. So the feedback was that it's very simple. So for a lot of you practitioners who are kind of thinking about what you want to introduce in your organization, I think A3 is a great place to start because it's very simple. You don't worry so much into the tools as so much in terms of some of the principles and tenets surrounding. Hey, we focus on solving it in 30 to 60 days. since we are such a risk averse industry, sometimes you can come out with good ideas, but you can't really implement them. So we say, hey, you need to have your sponsor a part of your A3, and the sponsor becomes the coach essentially as part of the A3 process, so that you're able to get your stuff done. You need to go to the Gemba, as we normally say, solve for root causes. Experimentation was a key thinking that we did. And you could do this. So people who are used to design thinking applied design thinking recipes are in the 4 boxes. People who are used to do it Kaizen style would do a 5-day Kaizen. People who are doing agile could do it through sprints. So we were just left to them in terms of how we do it. We just gave the framework and what was key expected and how we wanted to measure. So the A3 was something that really worked well. Of course, as most of you have done, we drove the whole thing programmatically, right? Which is, hey, what is it to drive it as a program? So, as a team, we came out with what was our target condition. And we said, hey, we've got 14,000 managers, line managers, people managers in the bank. Wouldn't it be great if every single people manager is a good coach for doing A3? So how do we get them to just first not just coach, but before that they need to kind of experience, learn, apply, become good at it, and then start coaching their colleagues in terms of doing this? A bunch of different things in terms of engagement. We created a measurement system, so every single improvement was captured in a database, and we could have a lot of stats around it in terms of, hey, how many A3s were done, what was the quality of the A3s, what is the kind of impact generated, and so on, and a lot of certification, creating capacity, and so on. So like many of you, we would have done a whole lot of different things: engagement, awards, creating capacity, showing and telling, coaching, training, and so on, to kind of drive this. But to me, whilst we were doing this, we realized that sometimes we were really successful in driving within teams, and they really embraced it. The leader was great, but many a times the teams themselves were not looking at. So we were successful, but not always successful. So I can't come to this question as to, hey, is this enough? While we trying to train people, get them to get onto the Gemba, work with them. Is that really enough for a continuous improvement transformation to happen across a large organization? So when I moved from this was always kind of at the back of my mind, say, why were we really successful? So one of the things that when I moved to Amazon, I was exposed to Jim Collins's Good to Great, and especially the Flywheel, where essentially they said that, hey, there is no one theme or event that makes a company from good to great. A lot of small things start to work together, and imagine this being a 5,000-pound stone flywheel. And once everybody starts to turn it slowly, at some point the wheel starts gaining momentum, and it starts moving based on its own weight and momentum. So essentially is that if we can identify what are those components of critical of a flywheel, then if you're able to do the right things, then the whole flywheels will start moving again and again. So here's an example of what Amazon's flywheel was, which is if the prices of your products are lower prices, that leads to higher customer experience. If you have great customer experience, customers will come onto the website. That will increase the traffic. If it increases traffic, you will have a lot more sellers wanting to sell their produce on the Amazon website. If a lot more sellers come in, you'll have a lot more selection that's happening that's available, and you have a lot more selection of different types of products. You'll have more customers joining in, and that flywheel kind of goes. Similarly, if you have great customer experience, more profits for the organization, they invest that into creating lower cost structure, which in turn helps you lower your prices more, and that lower prices will again drive customer experience and traffic. So what Amazon does by using this flywheel is looking at each cog in this entire flywheel, look at ways of reducing prices, improving customer experience, improving the traffic, giving the sellers a better deal so that they can come onto this. So as you turn this, all the events and engagements and energy you do against each of the pieces of the flywheel. Here's another example of Uber, for example, where hey, you increase the supply of the drivers, there will be lower wait times, which results in more riders, and if there are more riders, there is more rides per hour, which increases the earning potential for drivers, which means there are more drivers who wants to join Uber, and that increases the driver supply, and that wheel keeps turning again and again. So it is important for us to then figure out, hey, if I have to apply this element to our example of, hey, how do we drive continuous improvement and how do I make that really sustainable over many years? What will that flywheel current look like? And many of you have kind of, John Shook earlier talked about leadership role modeling, talked about zealots, and to me, this was one of the key findings or key learnings, that hey, if leaders are the key components of the flywheel, and if we are able to get the leaders as role models, we will really make them. We can make this transformation really successful. So we talked about leadership commitment, but what I've seen in this last 5 years, as well as organizations before, and in many transformations where I've been unsuccessful, is the role that these leaders play. Okay, so a good change model leader, okay, is a leader who has personally experienced the transformation. So you think about Larry Culp, you think about earlier today, Dr. Tiang from the hospital in Singapore was talking about she as a COO driving the transformation in the hospital. A leader would need to personally experience the transformation, because then the leader can talk and tell their stories in driving the initiative. A change leader actually spends a lot of personal time in terms of communicating the initiative, training others, and so on, and then they also make the change initiative their own. So if you pull all this together, this is what I came up with, and I think is the key secret sauce for making a transformation, or a continuous improvement transformation, or for that matter any change transformation, cultural transformation work in an organization. Firstly, the leader needs to have that experience, must have tasted the A3 problem solving in our case, hey, doing lean in a previous organization, and that leader wants to now drive this in the organization. The leader then becomes a role model, and for that the leader will spend a considerable amount of time in terms of communicating what he or she wants to drive in the organization. And when the leader role model in our case in Standard Chartered was the CEO who just joined at that time, who actually shot videos in terms of telling, hey, what an A3 looks like, what is expected, and what needs to be done. And the leader would go and meet the other leaders and tell them and ask them to join in this particular transformation that the company is set out to. The leader needs to make sure, okay, that you get early successes. So the first few transformations was the leaders getting a team of people, or a team of people who were good confidence, and we working with the leaders there and all to drive a few projects that were really successful. So the early success and the stories that were shared from the early success were critical in terms of moving to the next phase, which is essentially how you scale programmatically. And here's where we all play a role. We do training programs, we do communication things, we do coaching, mentoring sessions, and a lot of things that that drive this transformation across. What this programmatic thing does across that particular part of the organization is starts to energize the other colleagues. So other colleagues starts coming in, and I've seen here, level one leader doing this, and then suddenly, seeing a lot of success in that particular team, another leader who may be a peer of this particular leader saying, hey, I want to do this as well. The leadership team of this leader who started it wanting to now becoming the next role model, because they see this as a way to kind of either further their ambition, as well as they have started to see that this actually works for them. And how do they get involved? They actually then experience an A3 or a Kaizen event themselves, because this enables them to actually tell the story well. So people who have actually experienced things firsthand are the best people who can tell the stories. They become role models, and this wheel starts to grow. So essentially, if we turn this wheel enough number of times, you are in a very short period of time, and I saw this in the bank, that in less than a year we were able to mobilize close to 25,000 people, over 1,000 different leaders, because they were able to learn from each other, see the success. They wanted to now start sharing what they have done, and they become in turn the role models that will take this forward. Now, the flywheel also helps because imagine, after 2 3 years, the head of the zealot, if I say so, okay, has left the organization, and you have a new new leader coming in. The flywheel has moved so many number of times. The flywheel has moved so many number of times. Now, when the new leader comes in, which is actually what happened in the bank, the new leader sees that, hey, there is a very successful motion that's working. The new leader sees a lot of examples. There are awards happening, people talking passionately about how they have driven the improvements in their areas, and the leader wants to just doesn't then want to stop this, but wants to continue this journey forward. So what they essentially do is, now they have started becoming the role model after they themselves taste a couple of improvement cycles themselves, and then they are able to take this further. So that's been our journey in the bank. I do think that this could be a good model. The role essentially for us practitioners is this: our job to be done is essentially to activate such leaders. So we activate such leaders, get them to become change role models, and if you're able to then push the flywheel and keep it turning, that's when a continuous improvement program can last a few years. I must say that it's just been, I think, 4 5 years in the bank, so they have not had the legacy in terms of driving it like a Toyota over what of 40 50 years. But I think this is a good model for a lot of new companies who are just about embracing a cycle of continuous improvement to kind of follow you. So with that, I'll just stop, and happy to take questions from you, John, or from the crowd here.
Wow, thanks a lot, Raj. Very, very impressive. Yeah, I really love the flywheel analogy, right? And how you have that part with the energize the colleagues. I really think that's the secret to the success, maybe, that you tapped into. Kind of like a yoga spreading horizontally throughout an organization, and you were able to scale up because, like someone had said once, you can't run away from success. So as people show results, other people kind of look over and say, wow, I want to be part of that, right? And so I might even continue your flywheel analogy and say, you almost start with the smaller flywheel, maybe, right? And then you show some success, and then you're able to scale up a bigger flywheel, and then you can start making that wheel go faster and faster. So really nice sharing there. If anyone has any questions, by the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. And then the other thing that I was thinking of as well is, we talk about lean thinking and lean practice, right? And there's kind of a yin yang balance there. So for the tools, sometimes we emphasize a little too much and sometimes not enough. And I also think about what John Shook likes to say about acting your way to a new way of thinking instead of the other way around. If you get people in a room and say, hey, I want you to think on a one page and not 100 pages, right? They will maybe throw you out of the room. But by acting your way to that new way of thinking, you create the culture by getting something actually in place that they could practice that tool. And you also demonstrate, I think, knowing the people, right? Knowing the organization. So even the choice of words, I noticed on your A3, it's got the word design. So if you say analysis and some other things, sometimes people find that it's not that inspiring anyway, right? So by using the simple word design, that can make a big difference. And only having 4 boxes. All those things, little things maybe, but they can add up. I knew an organization that used a 9-box A3, and then they wondered why nobody wanted to do A3. So the tool can also make a big difference.
Yeah, no, you're right, John. I mean, I think it's important. It's like horses for courses, right? What works in an organization? I think as lean leaders, another thing was, hey, how do you remove the friction here? If from driving improvements, get rid of all the just get rid of all the bureaucracy in terms of certification. Get more people to join in. Maybe they will not do it right first time, but the easier you make for them to kind of do things and join in this whole transformation and start asking them to own it, that really helps drive the change faster. Yeah. I know we are out of time. I can see Thompson on the
Yeah.
call.
Christopher has virtually popped in and will be
Yep.
going to the next transition. Thanks a lot, Raj. And here you go back, Christopher.
Thank you so much, John.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, John. It was very, very nice presentation.